What's up, y'all? I'm Lydia from Nashville,
Hi, what's up, cops? I'm Marcus from Canada.
and we're going to go through the news today. We're going to have a blitz, I think.
Yeah, I think I have been always thinking about like we get as cops we get the news either from
Mm,
like channels that are not necessarily curated to us or channels that are run by the church, which mainly
right.
talks about the Pope went to where and the
Mm,
bishops did what and the priest did what. But um, I think we can try to do the news differently about topics related to Copts, not necessarily to the institution, to the church institution.
mm,
Sometimes we will touch, of course, on the church institution because it is a big part of Copts' life, but we will try or to center Copts or
mm,
community in these news pieces.
mm.
Okay?
Yeah, I love it. Let's go for
Alrighty.
it.
Let's present that
Yeah,
screen
so
share.
if you find us on YouTube at What's Up Cops, you can actually see this video and you can see the screen that Marcus is about to share and
So,
follow along.
yeah, and I think so. Starting here, this is a Baptist News Glober, an evangelical
Mm,
website, and I think actually it's important for us to think about who is talking about us as Copts, who is
right.
reporting about us as Copts. This is very
Mm,
important because in many cases we get tokenized, we get used,
mm,
our narratives get tweaked or used in a very biased way. Of course, all the news are biased in a way or another,
mm-hmm.
but it's important to look at the sources. So, how to fix ICA? Would you like to read the
Yeah,
title?
how to fix anemic U.S. rural healthcare. Learn from Africa and look at churches.
This is interesting though, because this article talks about how the work that the Coptic Orthodox Church have done in Africa, particularly in places like Kenya.
Mm,
So if you want to go, we can put links to
mm,
these articles at the bottom of our video and links in the podcasts as well. But without going into many details of the article itself, but I think it's important to think how we use our resources as Copts in places like Africa.
mm,
And we need to think about the idea of mission, the idea of evangelizing. What are we gaining from this? Are we repeating the colonial history that have been done on Africa? And why the Baptist News Global, an evangelical news
mm.
outlet, is reporting about us and wanted the U.S. to learn from the Coptic Orthodox work in rural Africa. And as you can see, this is like a Coptic Orthodox church, and in it, Black Africans are in the church, or maybe native to the certain country, or maybe Kenya, in the news piece.
This is
Reflections.
a such a weird headline to me because it's just so funny that instead of investigating the issues with like the US government and western systems of medical care that create this lack of healthcare within rural areas in the United States, they're like, why don't we continue to privatize it through Christian missionaryism and the church, as opposed to finding a more useful way of going about this. So they're like not looking at like Canada or England about how to fix rural healthcare, but like such a weird, like, yeah, such a weird roundabout way, and one that reinforces like Western medical practices too, of needing a hospital as opposed to, healers within the community too. So this is just a very odd article, but
Yeah. If we move beyond this,
yeah.
and I think actually these topics would open other topics for us. Maybe we can talk about them later, because in the U.S. we see, and in the U.S. and in Canada we see. So in Canada, for example, there are hundreds of indigenous communities around Canada that has a water
Right.
advisory. So folks there, they do not have clean water. Indigenous people don't have clean water. And the rhetoric, the evangelical missionizing
Right.
rhetoric is always like, let's help the poor Africans, and it's
Yeah.
very, and they do this too. And interestingly, we see some younger Coptic priests and leadership, they outsource the talk about evangelizing or missionizing, even in northern Canada too, to
Oh God.
evangelize indigenous people in Canada. They don't
Yeah.
like, they say, I don't like the word mission. We don't. It's just we spread the word of God and love,
Uh,
but it is definitely problematic. Are you taking part of the bigger
right.
picture of advocating and
Yeah.
pressuring the government to make these communities safer for drinking water, and instead of using your resources, taking all these volunteers at churches who are really passionate about volunteering in general, and just sending them to talk to indigenous people about God and
Oh God.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And you don't say that this is mission or evangelizing, but you can do a lot good work building on the community work that has been done, instead of focus on evangelizing.
Yeah, yeah. It's always like they have two hats on. They're like, I'm going to put on my Christianity hat right now and be helpful. And then I'm going to take that one off and put my hat that votes against your interests and displaces everyone and displaces you from resources. And I'm going to choose which one so I feel like I'm a good person. Yeah.
Yeah. The next step is I'm trying to, this time I'm actually trying to lower the microphone a little bit, because my deacon traits for the previous episode was like putting the microphone like this, and I was like, so I am trying to just deaconize myself here. So there is a discovery. This is Al Jazeera English. There is a discovery of. Go ahead, Lilia.
Right. Egypt unveils ancient mummification workshops and tombs.
Yeah, and why are we connected to this? Because the site is located to a northern place. It's called Memphis, and guess what? Memphis, you folks have a Memphis in
Right.
Tennessee. But our Memphis was way older, and it's in the northern part of Egypt. It's not called Memphis anymore. The Memphis, it's called Mitrahina, but
Oh.
we are mentioned here because there are Coptic monastery sites close to these places too, and that reminds us of how our Egyptian is super interconnected with our ancient Egyptian ancestors. So whether we built on our previous Egyptian ancestors or close to them, so yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, actually, this is very interesting, if, like, Egyptian monasticism started on the basis of Egyptians were already used to going into the desert, or something that called to them from the desert, or I don't know. It's very interesting that it would be near the monasteries, and what kind of memory we have of the desert in that sense. Thousands of years ago.
And that reminds us, honestly, was like, again, we have multiple narratives when we talk about, like, did we ruin our ancestors tombs, for example, to
Right.
because calling it begin and then build on it. So either ruin it totally, as some narratives say, and build on it, or use it like,
Right.
for example, we see at like the Fiyala temple in Aswan or other temples that you would find like they just deform a
Oh.
a wall engravements and or carving, and they add a sign of the cross, for example, and they add an altar to the temple or stuff like that. So it's so we're and also that the church doesn't, or that the mainstream narrative of the church narrative doesn't really like to talk about that. You know what? We might have ruined ancient Egyptian artifacts or temples because of that push and the rush of Christianity to Egypt, or it happened in many different ways. So, anyway, it's just this, like in many cases, with finding ancient Egyptian artifacts, you you might find different layers of Egyptianness, including Coptic sites as well.
I'm curious why it's so small for the human too. Like, was that a child or?
So it says canopic jars, which were made to keep the organs removed during the process of
Oh, they're just the
mummification.
organs. Okay.
Yes.
Good. 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 Good.
Okay. The next one, this is super cool. I like that.
This Jerusalem tattoo studio is part of a centuries-old Christian tradition. Yeah, and I think I follow them on, and I think I follow them on Insta. They're the Razout family in Jerusalem, and they're
Yeah.
Coptic.
Yes, and they are proud Coptic. And this is actually, so when you see, so the Razout family, so this is the dad. It's so funny that like he's wearing like Harley Davidson shirt, like super Americanized.
And like the eagle wings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is like that's
The
one of his
flame.
favorite tattoos. Like was the but
Amazing.
this person is Coptic, and it is a podcast actually. If you hit, you would hear it. It's the World podcast, and this is one of his Nizar Razu, and that's one of the like the sons of the father.
So,
Big,
in essence, this family has been doing this generation after generation. Okay.
yeah,
For a
yeah.
very long time. Okay.
There are details to the so generations and generations, and they talk about how they moved from Egypt to, and
Interesting.
so it's very fascinating. Yes, they do have an Instagram account, and guess what? They have a I don't know, a certified retailer or who carries their name in New Jersey. It's based in New Jersey.
Oh.
So
Interesting. What are they
yeah.
selling in New Jersey?
No, it's just because they have. If you go on their Instagram, they have in a way they marked their oldest designs, and they claim that these designs
Interesting.
are very Coptic, and there has been a published book about Coptic tattoos. It's not really available, but it actually mentioned many of the Razouks family tattoos in that book too, and they have them on their Instagram account and in that New Jersey branch account as well.
Interesting. Yeah, it says it goes back to the 1800s.
Yeah, there
It's a
are
long time.
there are many, yeah, like generations after generations, and
Yeah.
what fascinates me to something like this too, honestly, it's I think for us Copts, we are super diverse. We have super many interests, and like being artists and having tattoos, we're not just having this tattoo that many of us are having.
Right.
I got this tattoo like like when I was 3,
Oh.
and then it was updated when I was 5 because I shook my hand So they needed
Oh,
to fix it. Anyway,
yeah.
regardless of the practice, I don't want to make it about myself, but we have so many, like,
Yeah.
very wealthy and rich traditions.
Right. Wow.
Okay.
We'll drop their Insta link too for y'all to find them.
Yes.
I think they
Okay.
do a lot for if you visit Palestine, you can visit them.
That's the rest of. This is one of the Saint George, one of their
Mm.
oldest designs, and they have these. Here you go, and that's the book,
Mm.
and they have these
Oh
are
wow.
the very old, like historic themes that they have been having generation after generation.
Mm.
Okay, and it's honestly one of the things too. Like you see, that their customers are mostly non-Copts, so
Mm.
this is also one of the things that we can spread as Copts, our
Mm.
art,
Mm.
whether it is related to the faith or not.
Mm.
Okay,
Fascinating.
um,
Celebrate the tapestry of our community from Bakersfield. Okay.
a local newspaper in Bakersfield, California, and it's talking
Uh-huh.
about the tapestry of community. And guess what? We are here.
Ooh, some Coptic festival.
Yeah, Coptic Festival at San Dimiano Coptic Orthodox Church
But
in.
there's also a Sikh parade.
Yeah, so
Ah,
yeah, and then like a Sikh
fascinating.
parade, Latino food festival,
Okay.
Kwanzaa, Scottish games. So, and
Interesting.
yeah, I really like us being involved in the community like this, or
Mm.
at least being included into
Mm.
local newspapers too. So hopefully we would get many folks to attend our
Mm.
festivals, and maybe would leave the talking about Coptic festivals maybe at the end if we talk about
Yeah, let's do
Global
that.
Coptic Day.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? Of course, if you can,
Something about the Coptic Orthodox Church, Roman Catholic Church.
yeah,
Oh, it's probably the
ecumenism.
meeting.
Yeah, so of course we have been like still having all these things about
Mm.
Coptic, like the meeting between Pope
Mm.
Tawadros and Pope Francis. It's still gaining traction
Right,
around
right.
the internet. Lastly,
Counting Coptic Christians in Egypt by Samuel Tadros last May 26.
yes, it's a very
Yeah.
new article, but
Mm.
also keep in mind that it is at Providence. Providence is a right wing think
Mm.
tank magazine, and if you can see from the articles that, and
Mm.
these are not specifically picked articles or the things that I mentioned here. These are what Google Alert basically. If you have a Google Alert about Coptic or Copt, you would
Mm-hmm.
have these news. So I didn't really necessarily cherry pick them, but it gives you an idea about the interest
Mm.
in right evangelical
Yeah.
news outlets about
Mm.
us Copts. And Providence is one main place to
Right.
share right wing ideas,
Mm.
including hate against Muslims and against immigrants. So, and of
Mm.
course, we don't want to get into many details. I think the article worth reading. So yeah,
What's the conclusion there?
I,
Like that it's too difficult to count, or it should be done, shouldn't?
I think it's. I think Samuel Tedros is starting off, or at least making it, or
Mm.
try to put a spotlight on the issues with counting the number of cots, because it was for
Okay.
one of the very first times. Usually, when Pope Shenouda used to be asked about what's the number of cots, or he would be avoiding answering that question or not talking about it publicly. But I think one of the very first times a Coptic pope in the recent history to talk about the number of Copts was Pope Tawadros. Just, I think, a few weeks ago. So Samuel Tadros is trying, he's using, I don't want to give the conclusion, because if you want to read it, go ahead.
Okay.
Just keep in mind, again, about the source and the leanings of the sources. And because I think it is worth thinking why Pope Shenouda was used to be avoiding to talk about the number, and now Pope Tawadros is talking about the number, and why there is an issue with numbers. And I think Samuel Tadros, because of his experience in Egypt, he grew up there, spent most of a big part of his life there, so giving a good, or at least a narrative to Copts who never been to Egypt, so good details about it too. And it's interesting that they are using in Providence a photo from Tahrir, January 25th revolution, while actually now many right-wing folks do not like or demonize the time of Tahrir Square. So interesting observation of the use of the image.
You know, what's really fascinating about this, too, is that they don't want to count Coptic people in the United States. So, which is wreaking havoc here, but specifically in Nashville, in that we're not able to count how many of the Arabic-speaking community, and obviously the largest Arabic-speaking community here is the Coptic community. So, yeah, so this leads to a lot of not having the resources that we need. So during COVID, they only appointed one Arabic speaking resource navigator for the whole city for tens of thousands of people. Because Coptic people, we either put they're white or black. We don't have a MENA category. So this is just hilarious to me that they are spending so much energy and time as a think tank around that idea, as opposed to looking to what they can do. But that's my connection to the first article too, is the idea that they just don't want to investigate their own governmental and political failures, but they just want to harp on, let's look at Africa and let's see what's going on over there, whether positive racism or negative, which is I'm assuming where the Samuel Tedros article is going, but yeah.
Really
But we'll see.
Lydia, you wanted to share something like a post on Facebook was circulated in...
Yeah, so I don't have it pulled up, but honestly, I don't think we need to look at it. It's kind of dehumanizing and just bigotry. So late last week on a lot of the Coptic Facebook pages, there was a priest who started circulating this video that came up on Fox News of this white woman who goes into Target and she's like, I'm going to go get some clothes for my kids. And she goes into the pride section of that. And she's I put pride in quotations because obviously it's not the whole baby section, but she's like, she superimposes the pride section as they're doing this to all the babies and these are the only clothes options you have, and crying about it. And she makes a lot of claims about a lot of what right-wing people will say of they're pushing this down our throats, they want our kids to be this way, which is utter nonsense, and you choosing to be in the pride section is utter nonsense too. But anyways, so she makes this whole hullabaloo about that section and about it being enforced on children, and it blows up. It becomes very viral. Nobody really thinks anything of it because it's just oftentimes, as we know, this right-wing person who puts themselves into a situation. When I used to work in restaurants, there was always that one Karen who would come in and the restaurant opens at 9 and they'd be there at 10:30, or the restaurant opens at 11 and they'd be there at 10:30 and they'd be like, why are your doors not open? So anyways, they create their own issues. But it turns out that a lot of the right wing people, while a lot of people with sense were not kind of taking this seriously, but a lot of the right wing people started going into Targets and harassing employees and saying, "You obey Satan, you all are going to hell." Really aggressive language towards the employees. And they started threatening, like, physical threats towards employees and towards stores because of the Pride section. So Target, I think maybe over the weekend, I don't remember, maybe over the weekend, said that they're just going to pull the Pride section, which was, I think, then alerted a lot of people to be like, why are we caving? Why are we, going with what they wanted? And then it came out that they were, people, there was a lot of fear that right-wing people, when they make these types of threats towards employees and towards corporations, it's not just like, it's physical safety. That's the main threat here that Target is kind of trying to avoid. So it made me think of just how terrible that is, and that we've reached kind of a stage in our politics where people can frame things how they want to frame it. And what often happens is that the majority of people will just let it go because they're like, that's crazy talk. And then what ends up happening is we don't take the crazy talk seriously. And then it ends up hurting a lot of people and leading to this kind of bellowing issue. So, yeah, I don't know if people have seen it. Marcus, have you seen this video circulating?
No, I have not. But I'm actually, I would be curious about it because, again, I mentioned to you, Lydia, and then
Yeah.
previously in the intro, I'm interested in how hate group, and but particularly evangelical, right wing, target religious, conservative, traditional communities in North America and the U.S. and in Canada. So I'm a big follower to you name it, the news outlets that gears or does that very thing. But mainly one of them is like one new and like really Daily Wire. So the Daily Wire has been talking about this issue a lot, putting a lot of focus, honestly,
Yeah.
and it's really it's really sad to see, because they talk about they have been talking about Target issue nitpicking. So Target donates a group that promotes secret child gender transitioning, or watch football is gay NFL on Target. So Target released latest Pride collection complete with kids stuff. So all these things are super, and of course we have Matt Walsh here, that the canceling begins. Target pulls Walsh, Johnny, the because this
They were
person,
selling his, oh my gosh, his merchandise?
yeah, because no, he has an anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ book,
Right.
but also he calls it nature and pro-nature and stuff like that. So again, the playing on the words, I get that many folks in our community is really resonate and to messages like the Daily Wire and other conservative right-wing places. But there are many issues with such narrative. Like one time I was actually, since I am part of my research and work is for quality sex education in North America and in Canada particularly. And we have in our community, for example, and it's not just in our Coptic community, it's in the broader community as well. Folks would say they are part of that nonsense stuff, but I get the concern of like immigrants who are just moving here, trying to have a more stable life or something, and they don't have time to really delve into the news and like try to compare and all that things and the leanings and the what's far right, what's far left, and all the, it's a lot of work. But they share within each other mostly stuff from Fox News, from the Daily Wire, or even screenshots, and they start talking about it. And I'm assuming that was one of the videos that you're talking about, Lydia. And I told them like, oh, and they keep saying, so the parents would say they are forcing our kids to learn certain stuff. And the person, like when I listened to that person and I talked like, and then I told them, do you know that you can pull your kids from these? What's the forcing? Where is the forcing? You can pull out your kids from that, from one lesson. You can pull them from the whole
Right.
curriculum. You can homeschool your kid. You can send them to private schools. There are so like at least 5 options here
Yeah.
to do. So where is the forcing? And it reminds me actually the Bride Parade. We some of the churches around North America, some of the Coptic churches, they do procession in the streets for the Coptic festival or the Egyptian festival. They just had one at St. Mary's Feast, I think in Montreal, and actually folks. And that was in the neighborhood, in the streets, and it was a parade, and folks would really happy that something is like this happening. So there are so many parades happening. So why you really like your very own parades, and you don't give other people to have parades as well? Guess what? Many folks who are xenophobic and racist would see the Tonyas, even with a big cross on them, as uncivilized as folks who are coming from the so-called shithole countries. So it's really, and I have seen, because I have mentioned that my circles have many priests who are super close to me, priests and bishops and metropolitans. They talk about how border officers, even though the priests have very big crosses on their chests, they don't care. They look at the color skin, they look at the beard, and they profile you, even you are a Christian priest, as an alien. So not many people, even if you carry a huge statue of Saint Mary in your procession, would really think that you are a good Christian by doing so. Many folks who maybe are very like dogmatically atheist and they don't want any representation of religion on their streets, they won't like you. Many white people or folks who are xenophobic who would be not liking your galabeyas or tonyas because it represents uncivilization and stuff like that. So there are many things. So you are not forced to see or do anything at the end of the day.
It is actually interesting because I don't know if you remember a couple years ago there was like this court trial about this guy this famous cake maker who didn't want to make a cake for this gay couple and went to court about it, and and it was like a whole hullabaloo. So it's like to me, when you live in an individualist culture that really emphasizes choice, and living with a diversity of choices, and you just make your choice, you can't then kind of straddle the rope on both ends and say, well, I want a diversity of choices and to make my own choice, but I also want my only choice to be dictated to everybody else, which I feel is what's happening here. So you can't have a couple years ago, the right wing say that, oh no, it is the cake maker's choice to, and they have the right to choose not to make a cake for someone, and then come back and say, well, there can't be a pride section in, a kid's shopping area at a Target. You could just choose. So to me, if we lived in a collectivist culture, maybe they have more of an argument to make on a collective, bargaining between all of us on what we can have, but we live in an individualist culture, and that's something y'all actively choose to live by. So I don't understand where, anyways, it's just a very fascinating how often the arguments contradict each other, even on like the very basic line of how they believe society should be run. But
I think the kick thing. Honestly, I have heard it in Islamist hate groups too. So
Interesting.
we're talking about the far right and Islamists, and for me, they are both hate groups, and because in Islamist groups, they were talking about how not if they have a shop, not to serve a
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
who is not a good Muslim, even like a cool Muslim, they want to serve. So imagine
Yeah.
if they are Copts, if they are
Yeah.
Christians, if
Yeah.
they are so that's the issue too. And I think when we read the news or we see hate
Right.
actions like this,
Yeah.
we need to have it close to home in order to think like, supporting somebody who say I am not serving an LGBTQ person
Yeah.
in my kick shop should remind you of the Islamist person who is oppressing your sibling Copt or sibling Eastern Christian or Middle East Christian or whatever around the world, who doesn't want to serve them as well. So they are
Yeah.
both
Good
connected.
point. Good point. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. With that, we will see you all next time. Feel free to send us in feedback to let us know what you want us to talk about, any news articles, little videos that we can comment on. So, yeah, send it our way.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. See you, Marcus.